Most people see aging as the ultimate defeat, watching your strength fade, your beauty disappear, your relevance slip away. I used to think the same way until I met Eleanor at a coffee shop last year. She was 85, sitting alone with her tea, and something about her presence stopped me cold. There was this deep peace radiating from her that I'd never seen in anyone my age or younger. We started talking, and she told me something that completely shifted my perspective. Young people think aging is about losing everything, she said with a gentle smile. But I've never felt more connected to God than I do now. That conversation opened my eyes to a truth our youth-obsessed culture completely misses. We're taught that aging means decline, but spiritual traditions across the world know better. Today, I want to share 5 profound gifts that only come through the aging process. Gifts that unlock a level of spiritual wisdom you simply can't access when you're young. These aren't consolation prizes for getting older. They're the real treasures that transform your entire relationship with life and purpose. Gift 1. The liberation of letting go. When you're young, life feels like one giant performance where you're constantly trying to prove yourself. You're building your career, your reputation, your identity, accumulating achievements, relationships, possessions like they're going to save your soul. I remember my 20s and 30s being this exhausting race to become someone worthy of respect. But here's what nobody tells you about all that striving. It's spiritually exhausting. Every role you try to fill, every expectation you try to meet, everything you think you need to own creates this invisible weight on your spirit. You become a prisoner of your own ambitions, trapped by the very success you're chasing. Aging forces a different path. Your body starts setting boundaries your ego can't override. Your energy becomes precious, so you can't waste it on everything anymore. The roles that once defined you, the powerful executive, the perfect parent, the social butterfly, they start naturally falling away. At first, this feels terrifying. Who are you without your job title? What's your worth when you can't do everything you used to do? But then something beautiful happens. In that space where your old identity used to be, you discover who you actually are underneath all the performance. I've watched people find their true calling after retirement, not because they finally had time, but because they finally had permission to stop being who everyone else needed them to be. My neighbor Jim spent 40 years as an accountant, hating every minute. At 68, he started teaching kids to read at the local library. I never knew I was a teacher, he told me. I was too busy being successful to find out. This isn't about giving up or settling for less. It's spiritual decluttering at the deepest level. When you stop trying to be everything to everyone, you create space for what actually matters. You discover that your worth was never tied to your productivity or your achievements. It was always there, waiting patiently for you to notice. The liberation of letting go connects you to something divine because it mirrors how God loves us, not for what we do or accomplish, but simply for who we are. Young people can understand this intellectually, but aging makes you live it. Every attachment you release, every expectation you drop, every role you outgrow brings you closer to experiencing unconditional love, both giving it and receiving it. This is why so many elderly people seem to glow with an inner peace that younger people chase, but can't quite capture. They've learned the secret that spiritual teachers have been trying to tell us forever. That true freedom comes not from getting everything you want, but from releasing your need to want so much in the first place. Gift 2. the clarity of mortality. When you're young, death feels like a distant concept, something that happens to other people in other families, maybe someday far in the future. This creates a dangerous illusion that you have infinite time to figure everything out. You can put off the important conversations, delay the meaningful work, postpone the spiritual growth, because there's always tomorrow, next year, next decade. I lived this way for most of my life, treating time like it was unlimited. I'd waste entire weekends scrolling through social media, spend years in jobs that drained my soul, hold grudges against people I love because I figured we'd work it out eventually. The future felt so vast that nothing seemed truly urgent, but aging changes this calculation completely. When your friends start getting serious diagnoses, when you attend more funerals than weddings, when your own body starts sending you wake-up calls, death transforms from abstract concept to intimate teacher. And here's the paradox. This awareness doesn't make life scarier. It makes it sacred. When you truly understand that your time is limited, everything shifts. Suddenly, you can't afford to spend energy on petty arguments or superficial pursuits. You stop caring what strangers think about your choices because their opinions won't matter when you're gone. The grudges you've been carrying feel ridiculous when you realize how few conversations you have left with the people you love. This isn't morbid thinking. It's the most clarifying force in human existence. I've watched people completely transform when they received a terminal diagnosis, not because they were dying, but because they finally started living. They quit jobs they hated, reconciled with estranged family members, traveled to places they'd always dreamed of seeing. The proximity to death didn't steal their joy. It revealed what joy actually was. There's something deeply spiritual about this awakening. When you accept that your physical existence is temporary, you start sensing your connection to something eternal. You begin to see your life not as the whole story, but as one chapter in a much larger narrative. Your role becomes clearer, not to live forever, but to love well while you're here. I've met elderly people who describe this shift as finding God in their mortality. They stopped asking why me about their limitations and started asking what now. About their remaining time, they discovered that accepting death doesn't make you hopeless. It makes you fearless. When you're no longer afraid of dying, you're finally free to truly live. Gift 3. The wisdom of accumulated experience. There's a difference between knowing something and understanding it, between reading about life and having lived it. When you're young, your wisdom comes mostly from books, advice from others, and theories about how the world works. It's valuable knowledge, but it lacks the weight of lived experience. Young people can memorize quotes about resilience, but someone who's survived decades of actual hardship knows what those words really mean. They've felt the crushing weight of loss and discovered they could still breathe. They've watched their carefully laid plans crumble and learned that sometimes the detours lead to better destinations than the original route ever could have. This isn't about age making you smarter. It's about time giving you pattern recognition. After living through multiple economic downturns, you understand that financial panic is temporary. After watching several generations of family drama, you recognize which conflicts are worth engaging and which ones will resolve themselves. After experiencing love, loss, betrayal, and forgiveness repeatedly, you develop an almost supernatural ability to see through surface-level situations to the deeper truths underneath. The pain that once felt like it would destroy you becomes your greatest teacher. The divorce that shattered your world in your 30s now helps you counsel your daughter through her relationship struggles. The career failure that felt like the end of everything now gives you compassion for anyone facing professional setbacks. The health scare that terrified you becomes wisdom about what really matters. When your friend receives a similar diagnosis, this accumulated experience creates a unique form of spiritual insight. You start seeing God's hand, not just in the good moments, but in the entire tapestry of your life, including the threads that seemed dark and meaningless when you were living through them. You understand that your story wasn't random chaos punctuated by occasional grace. It was all grace, even the parts that hurt. Elderly people often become bridges between human struggle and eternal truth. Because they've lived long enough to see how both operate, they know that the crisis consuming your attention right now probably won't matter in 5 years. They understand that the person who hurt you is likely carrying their own unhealed wounds. They've learned that most of what we worry about never happens, and the things that do happen are rarely as catastrophic as we feared. This wisdom can't be rushed or taught. It can only be earned through time. Young people can read about forgiveness, but someone who's spent decades practicing it knows how it actually works in real relationships. They understand that forgiveness isn't a one-time decision, but a daily choice, that healing happens slowly, that some wounds become sources of strength rather than sources of pain. The elder's role becomes sacred in this context. They're not just old people with outdated opinions. They're living libraries of human experience, repositories of hard-won wisdom about how to navigate the complexities of being human while staying connected to something divine. Here's what I want you to remember. Aging isn't about losing your life. It's about finding your soul. Every year you live, every limitation you accept, every attachment you release is preparing you for a deeper spiritual connection than you ever thought possible. Start seeing your future aging not as decline, but as spiritual preparation for the wisdom that's waiting for you. If this perspective on aging resonated with you, subscribe for more content on finding purpose at every stage of life. The gifts are waiting. You just need to live long enough to unwrap them.